Looking for magic cards? At flipsidegaming.com you can now use the promo code LVD to get a 10% discount on orders over $10 while supporting the channel at the same time. Hello and welcome to another Magic Arena gameplay video. This week we're taking a look at a Golgari Graveyard deck featuring a lot of the new Golgari cards with powerful graveyard synergies. So the deck has been going through a lot of different iterations. At first the deck had multiple copies of Necrotic Wound in it as a cheap removal spell, and we also had the full 4 copies of Assassin's Trophy. But those numbers quickly started dwindling to the point where whenever I drew the card I wasn't actually happy to have access to it, and I would rather just have more creatures to help us fuel the graveyard and set up our synergies. So right now I'm actually not playing any copies of Necrotic Wound and Assassin's Trophy, instead favoring a more creature heavy approach, which will make our Undergrowth synergies more powerful. And the main kind of build-around card in the deck is Izoni Thousand-Eyed, which is a 6-mana 2/3 legendary creature with Undergrowth. So when Izoni enters the battlefield, we get to create a 1/1 black and green insect token for each creature card in our graveyard. And it's not unusual for us to make 10 or more insect tokens when Izoni enters the battlefield. And Izoni can also pay mana to sacrifice another creature to gain life and draw cards. So a very powerful late-game card draw engine to boot. So Izoni is the card we're building around, so the goal of the deck is to try and get as many creature cards in our graveyard and then set up our Izoni to take over the game. So let's take a quick look at our entire deck list here, starting out with our 1-drops, where we've got the full 4 copies of Stitcher Supplier as a 1-mana 1/1 zombie, that when it enters the battlefield or dies, we get to put the top 3 cards of our library into our graveyard. So a great way for us to fuel the graveyard with more creatures to set up our Undergrowth synergies, and also great sacrifice fodder for cards like Vraska and Izoni later in the game. Then we also have the full 4 copies of Llanowar Elves to provide a little bit of mana acceleration, since we do want to cast some expensive cards in the deck, so having that extra green mana is always useful. And even if we're not super consistently casting Llanowar Elves and Stitcher Supplier on turn 1, because it's difficult to have a mana base that can support both a black and green 1-drop on turn 1, they're still valuable additions later in the game. So even if we're casting a turn 2 or 3 Llanowar Elves, it will still help us cast our 6 and 7 drops ahead of schedule, and the Stitcher Supplier is always going to be valuable in our deck. Then moving on to our 2-drops, we've got 3 copies of Merfolk Branchwalker, which is a 2-mana 2/1 that explores when it enters the battlefield. So we can take a look at the top card of our library. If it's a land card, we can put it into our hand, so that's a nice 2-for-1. And if it's not a land card, we can put a +1/+1 counter on Branchwalker and then decide whether to put the top card in our graveyard or keep it on top of our deck. So it gives us a little bit of card selection, and in the case of putting creatures in our graveyard, that's always useful for Undergrowth. And then we also have the full 4 copies of Glowspore Shaman, which is a 2-mana 3/1, that when it enters the battlefield we can put the top 3 cards of our library into our graveyard, and we can also decide to put a land card from our graveyard on top of our deck in case we need to hit more land drops in the future. So this is yet another card that helps us fuel the graveyard. So as you can see, a lot of the early game is dedicated to making sure we keep hitting our land drops and fueling the graveyard for Undergrowth synergies. Then moving on to our 3-drops, we've got 3 copies of Journey to Eternity, which is also an important piece of the puzzle. It's a legendary enchantment aura that has to enchant one of our own creatures, and when the enchanted creature dies, we get to return it to the battlefield under our control, and we also get to transform Journey into Cave of Eternity, which is a legendary land that has the ability to make 1 mana of any color, and for 5 mana, and tapping the cave, we can also return target creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield, which is a very powerful, repeatable effect that's very difficult for the opponent to interact with, unless they're packing copies of Field of Ruin. There is always a little bit of risk involved with Journey, since if the opponent can kill the creature you're trying to enchant in response, then of course the Journey is not going to transform, the creature dies, and you lost out on a whole lot of value. But when the Journey does manage to transform, then the payoff is very big, since Cave usually takes over the game. So the easiest way of transforming Journey, of course, is just enchanting a creature, the opponent attacks into it, you block or chum block, and the creature dies, and you get to transform Journey, and you get to win the game from there. Usually opponents don't really cooperate as easily, so they might stop attacking into your creature once it's enchanted, but that's also why we have a whole bunch of ways for us to sacrifice our own creatures. One of those is Vraska Golgari Queen, which we'll get to in a second. And we also have our next card here, Plaguecrafter, which is a 3-mana 3/2, that when it enters the battlefield, each player has to sacrifice a creature or planeswalker, and players that can't do that have to discard a card. So this can act as a nice removal spell if the opponent only has 1 important creature or planeswalker in play, and can also help us sacrifice creatures that are enchanted by Journey to Eternity. Then we also have 2 copies of Elvish Rejuvenator as a 3-mana 1/1 creature that when it enters the battlefield, we can take a look at the top 5 cards of our library to reveal a land card to put on the battlefield tapped, so it helps us ramp, and also provides a 1/1 body that we can sacrifice to various effects. And we also have a 1-off copy of Thrashing Brontodon to deal with artifacts or enchantments if we pay 1 mana to sacrifice a Brontodon, and it's also just a 3-mana 3/4, which is pretty big, and also synergizes very nicely with Journey to Eternity, since if we put a Journey to Eternity onto a Thrashing Brontodon and have a 1 mana spare, we can sacrifice a Brontodon targeting our own Journey to Eternity, and what's going to happen is that the Brontodon's going to die as part of the cost of sacrificing it, which means that instead of destroying the Journey, it's actually just going to help us transform it. So we'll have a transformed Journey, and we'll get our Brontodon back into play, so that's just an easy way for us to help us transform Journey. Then moving on to our 4-drops, we've already mentioned Vraska Golgari Queen, which we are playing the full 4 copies as another important card in our deck. Starts out at 4 loyalty. With the +2 ability, we can decide to sacrifice another permanent, and we don't have to do that if we don't want to and just want to add 2 loyalty to Vraska, but if we do, we get to gain 1 life and draw a card. So usually we're sacrificing cards like Stitcher Supplier, which we want to sacrifice anyway, and maybe some other disposable creatures, and late in the game we can start sacrificing lands to draw additional cards. Then the -3 ability can act as a removal spell, destroying target non-land permanent with convert mana cost 3 or less, so it's not limited to just creatures. And then the -9 ability can also be game winning, since we get an emblem that says, whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. So that's an easy way for us to just kill the opponent by attacking with some of our smaller creatures, especially if we've made a few tokens with Izoni. Then we've got the 2 copies of Golgari Findbroker, which also synergizes very nicely in our deck as a 4-mana 3/4 creature that when it enters the battlefield we can return target permanent card from our graveyard to our hand, and with all the self-milling from Stitcher Supplier and Glowspore Shaman, there's going to be a lot of sweet cards for us to return with the Findbroker, giving us a lot of selection, and just a 3/4 body for 4 mana is not bad either. And then we also have 1 copy of Ravenous Chupacabra as another removal spell in creature form, 4 mana for a 2/2 that when it enters the battlefield, we can destroy target creature an opponent controls. So also synergizes nicely with our various graveyard synergies, and can even return it with a Journey to Eternity late in the game. Then at 5 mana we have 2 copies of Doom Whisperer, which is a 5 mana 6/6 with flying and trample, so already great stats, but also has the ability to pay 2 life to surveil 2, so that synergizes very nicely with Izoni. So one of the common play patterns is to play Doom Whisperer, and then before taking our following draw step, we can pay as much life as we feel comfortable paying to surveil as much as possible, and that will allow us not only to fuel the graveyard with a whole bunch of creatures by putting them in the graveyard, but it can also help us find Izoni if we don't have it already, or potentially find land number 6 if we don't have that lined up. And then once we do cast Izoni on the following turn, it's going to be making a whole bunch of insect tokens and probably win the game from there. So we've got 3 copies of Izoni, which also something interesting given that it's a legendary creature. If we do happen to have Journey of Eternity and have 1 Izoni in play and 1 in the graveyard, then we can activate Cave's ability once it's transformed and get the Izoni from our graveyard on the battlefield. And then because it's legendary, we can only keep 1 of the 2 copies of Izoni. We'll get a whole bunch of insect tokens regardless, and then 1 of the 2 Izonis is going to go back in the graveyard, which means that we can once again get it back with Cave of Eternity and kind of keep that loop going indefinitely, and can also potentially play around exile effects by activating Cave in response and then sacrificing the targeted Izoni so it doesn't get exiled but instead goes into our graveyard. And Izoni's ability to sacrifice other creatures also comes in handy when trying to transform Journey to Eternity, since we can just sacrifice the creature ourselves without needing the opponent's cooperation. Then we also have a 1-off copy of Vraska Relic Seeker, just as another powerful curve topper that can win the game by itself. And finally we have 1 copy of Hatchery Spider, which is a 7 mana 5/7 with reach, so it helps us protect our life total against flyers, which we're pretty weak to otherwise. And also has the Undergrowth ability that when we cast Hatchery Spider, so it doesn't even have to resolve, so pretty powerful against control decks that rely on counterspells. We get to reveal the top X cards of our library, where X is the number of creatures in our graveyard, and then we can put a green permanent card with convert mana cost X or less from among those on the battlefield. And one of the powerful synergies, of course, is that if we have 6 or more creatures in our graveyard, if we're lucky enough to find Izoni, we can just get it on the battlefield right away, and it also plays around counterspells nicely since the opponent won't get the chance to counter Izoni that way. And of course, if we do resolve Spider, a 7 mana 5/7 with reach is still decent. And then our mana base is very straightforward, 8 swamps, 8 forests, 4 overgrown tombs, and 4 woodland cemeteries. And if we were to build a sideboard for the deck, this would be a good place to start. We've got 4 copies of Duress versus control decks to take a key counterspell to clear a path for one of our powerful cards. We've got 2 Assassin's Trophies as kind of catch-all answers that can also help us answer Planeswalkers, for example. Thrashing Brontodon versus artifacts and enchantments, and still just a fine creature by itself in the deck. Chupacabras to help us against the green creature decks, can take out a Galta, which can be pretty scary sometimes, and some Vraska's Contempts to answer sticky creatures like Rekindling Phoenix, which our deck can also struggle with, and then some Crawl Foragers versus red burn decks to help us gain a whole bunch of life at once and put ourselves out of burn range, and then our late game should be able to take over. So this would be an okay place to start for sideboard. Again, not perfect, haven't played many sideboarded games with the deck, but just some ideas to throw your way. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the draw. This hand's lacking green mana, but it does have pretty much all the pieces we need. We've got Supplier to fuel the graveyard, Eternity to put on the Supplier, and Vraska to help us sacrifice it. So I don't think we can really mulligan this hand, just because the upside, if we do find green mana, is too high. But there's definitely a fail rate here. Alright. And a Pridemate. Alright, so it's a life gain themed deck. And we did find the Overgrown Tomb, so that's a nice pickup. So next turn we could play Vraska to deal with the Pridemate. We could just play a Journey. We'll see. Sworn Companions, that's fine. And on attack for 2. I think I'll take it for now. And now we can play Vraska. Could minus on the Pridemate, but then the tokens could finish off Vraska. The main issue with playing Journey, enchanting Supplier, if your opponent has some Conclave Tribunal to exile the Supplier, then the Journey will not transform. So ideally we would have Vraska in play already when we do play the Journey, so we can transform it right away. Could also Findbroker, returning Findbroker, which is pretty sweet. Could just Vraska and then plus, putting it at 6 loyalty. So pretty unlikely that the opponent can kill it. I think I like that the most. And then I don't think I sacrifice anything. I could sacrifice the Supplier, but keeping it as a blocker could be useful. Don't really want to sack any lands. So yeah, let's just decline for now. So we're playing it pretty conservatively here, but this is gonna make it more likely for us to be able to transform Journey next turn, which will take over the game. Of course, our opponent could just have a Tribunal for Vraska, but then we won't have wasted any resources and we can just play Journey on Supplier and block with it. It's just gonna be a Conclave Guildmage, that's fine. So can maybe give their creatures trample or make a token late in the game. And a Loxodon. Alright, that's fine. So now what? Can play Journey on Supplier, sack it, and that'll transform Journey into Cave. And then we can still play Rejuvenator too. So that seems pretty good. And Supplier coming back will fuel the graveyard even more. And now we've got all the mana we need to be able to activate our cave. And let's see what goodies we can get back. Izoni's already there. So not too many creatures yet, but we can always jump with the Supplier here. Opponent's likely to want to kill Vraska. So yeah, double Izoni plus Cave should be able to beat all the opponent's ground creatures. I guess Guildmage giving Trample could be relevant, but... Alright, so how much is our opponent sending at Vraska? Not enough to kill her, so we can actually keep her alive. For an additional turn, which seems worth it. And this put more creatures in the graveyard for Izoni, so now we're looking at quite a few extra insect tokens. Yeah, the trample on Guildmage is the thing I'm most worried about now. Let's see if we milled any Chupacabras. Nope. Alright, so... probably just activating Cave to get back Izoni. And then we can still play a Branchwalker. So I think we lead with Branchwalker here. And we'll keep that on top. I think we just get back Izoni now. That way we can sacrifice an insect with Vraska. And draw into our spider, which we can play next turn. Opponent's gonna try and kill Vraska here with the trample ability. So we probably won't be able to save Vraska. But once we find an answer to the Guildmage, the Izoni chains are just gonna take over the game. Alright, so I see everyone except for one Pridemate coming at Vraska. So that's 9 plus 4 is 13 power, and we've got 10 toughness, so we can't actually save Vraska here, but we can take out a Pridemate, so that seems decent. And we'll take out the other Pridemate as well, since those are kind of the scarier cards here. And we'll keep one around. Alright, that seems good. Yeah, the trample is only scary if they've got giant Pridemates, but if we can trade for the Pridemates, the trample doesn't really matter. So Vraska's dead, but so are the Pridemates. And a War Leader, that's fine. And even more Izonis. It's funny, if Izoni was one card down, we could have actually found it with a Spider, but now we've got all the Izonis in our deck in hand, or in play. Could still find something sweet with the Spider though. It's probably worth it. And yep, Vraska's fine. And I think I'm just gonna deal with the Guildmage now. Could also try and work our way up towards an ultimate ability to win the game. But now we can pretty much do whatever we want and we would probably still win. Yeah, all the creature matchups like this should be pretty good matchups. We could struggle against decks with a lot of flying creatures, a lot of creatures with unblockable, since then Izoni is not a stabilizing play. Control decks are usually beatable if we do get to transform a Cave. Without it, it might be a little bit more difficult. Resplendent Angel can make a bunch of flying tokens, so that's definitely a card we want to try and take care of. Opponent could have attacked with their tokens to make an Angel token potentially. They decided not to, but we still have the Spider which can block the Angel just fine, I guess. Alright, so let's start by sacking Izoni. And Doom Whisper's pretty good too here. So what do we want to do? I can just get back Izoni at instant speed with the Cave. Seems decent. So we've got 2 mana left. I guess we'll just play another Llanowar Elves. Could also play Izoni out of our hand. We'll just play it like this for now. Alright, our opponent is sending the team. That's fine. Let's bring back Izoni. And make some trades. Alright, so this is going to get a little bit messy. So we're killing War Leader, killing Angel, and then trading for all the tokens essentially, and then taking 4 from Loxodon seems fine. They might have some sort of mass pump spell to save some of their creatures. Otherwise this attack would be pretty reckless. But I think we're fine either way. Alright, damage happens. Opponent's left with a Loxodon and now a Nullhide Ferox, which doesn't bother us at all. Just a 4 mana 6/6 creature, doesn't have trample, so can just get jump blocked by insect tokens over and over again. And our opponent's just gonna scoop it up here. Yeah, we could win the game pretty much however we wanted to now. Whether that's the Vraska ultimate or just Izoni making endless supplies of insect tokens. Alright, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the play. This hand's looking okay. Could definitely use a little bit of ramp to help us get the Whisper in play a turn earlier. Since we don't have any turn 3 or 4 plays lined up. Up against the blue-black. And don't really need any additional lands here. Alright, so it's Grixis deck. Blue, black, red. Presumably control. And it's gonna be Discovery. Alright, well, this would be a great turn to draw Journey to Eternity, for example. Llanowar Elves, Elvish Rejuvenator would be good draws. Opponent puts in Angrath in the graveyard. Ooh, and there's Journey, perfect. So let's attack with both. And usually it's better value to put Journey on Supplier, but against a control deck I kind of like Journey on Shaman, since they can't really keep ignoring the 3 damage, so they're more likely to want to kill the Shaman than the Supplier. And when they do, we'll be able to transform Journey. Could still get blown out by Vraska's Contempt, which exiles Shaman. Ooh, a Thief of Sanity, alright. It's definitely an annoying one to face. Think we keep the Supplier around. Next turn we get to play a Doom Whisperer. Hopefully they don't find anything too sweet here. They could find a Vraska, which can destroy the Journey. On the bright side, the cards they don't select go to our graveyard. So they could potentially help us fuel Undergrowth. And a Darfleet Daredevil, just as a 2/1 first striker. That's fine. Alright, so I don't mind attacking with the Shaman here. If they block, we would get to transform Journey. If they do, alright, sweet. So we could Doom Whisper. Would be a little awkward in the face of a counterspell like an Essence Scatter. I guess we can just get a Doom Whisper from the graveyard now. which plays around a counterspell pretty nicely. Alright, and Doom Whisperer, also blocker for Thief of Sanity. So their opponent will need an instant speed answer here. Alright, we get to block. So that's one that Thief of Sanity. And Eldest Reborn, that's totally fine. Do have to be careful on the 3rd chapter when they get a creature back, but yeah, our opponent's just going to concede here. Just goes to show the power level on Cave of Eternity when it does transform is just so high, since we're very good at fueling the graveyard and finding bigger and better targets every turn. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the play. This hand's looking quite good. Turn 1 Supplier, turn 3 Eternity, turn 4 Vraska to help us sacrifice. And I guess a Plaguecrafter can also help us sacrifice, so yeah. Got all the pieces we need. Already 3 creatures in graveyard, including Izoni. So this is shaping up nicely. Turn 1 Hunted Witness, so some sort of aggressive, maybe token deck. Could also be Boros, I guess. So let's just play Cemetery, say go. Not too interested in attacking. So green whites and flower gets a forest. I'll take it. So we could play Journey, could get punished if our opponent goes land into Conclave Tribunal. But that would also mess with our Vraska setup. Could just play another Supplier. I think we just Journey here. Opponent's not going to want to attack with the Witness. And hopefully we'll dodge Tribunal. Alright, history, perfect. That's Vraska. And mill a bunch with Supplier. And we can even play another one. So pretty full graveyard. Opponent gets another Knight from history. And next turn we can just activate Cave, get Izoni going. District Guide can find him a land. It's totally fine. Yeah. Another Witness, maybe a Loxodon this turn with Convoke would be decent, but nope. I would be totally fine double blocking here. So 12 creatures in graveyard, not bad. And alright, they did have a Tribunal, but it came a little bit late here. Although, who knows, maybe they did have it on turn 3, but just didn't respect Journey enough. So we're just gonna say go here with our Cave up. We even have Brontodon that can get rid of the Tribunal potentially. Opponent sends. And they're gonna be greeted by some creepy crawlies. And we're just fine trading creatures here. Could have also considered just chumping the Knight token with Izoni so we could get it back. Well, I guess there's another Izoni in the graveyard already, so that also works. Let's just send everyone. And say go. Get back another Izoni end of turn, sacrificing one of them. But our opponent's just going to concede. Alright, sweet. So managed to enact our game plan perfectly here. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. This hand's looking good. Nice mix of mana ramp and setup cards. And Findbroker, kind of a payoff card here, as the Supplier can help us fuel the graveyard. Alright, so do we Supplier or do we Llanowar Elves? We're gonna probably have to take 2 from the Overgrown Tomb no matter what. So I don't mind going turn 1 Llanowar Elves here. Even though there's a chance it lines up poorly versus a shock. Alright, opponent's gonna shock. And a Boros Challenger. Fair enough. So we're kind of hoping to hit a spell here so Branchwalker can trade for Challenger, but I would also be fine with the land. Given that there's no creature to mentor onto, at least not yet. Opponent takes 2 from Sacred Foundries. This, alright, Militia Bugler. Was afraid of a Tajik here. And they reveal Knight of Grace. Alright, so just your typical red-white Boros aggro deck. Journey was an interesting draw. Since I don't think the opponent's going to have much in the way of exile effects for our creatures, so once we stick a Journey, they're just going to have to brute force their way past it, which is going to be good for us. That being said, we could also Rejuvenator here. Some interesting options for sure. I think I like Rejuvenator first. And then try to put the Journey onto the Supplier. Oof, that's rough. We missed with Rejuvenator. Doesn't happen very often. But I think we'll still be fine. Mantra of the Meek. So our opponent does have a bit of late game here. And they're attacking, so I'll gladly trade here. And then this turn we'll go Supplier into Journey. Mentor does make things a little trickier since the opponent's not really forced to attack. They can just kind of grind out card advantage with the Mentor of the Meek. But sooner or later we'll find a way to sacrifice the Supplier. And presumably our late game's better, so if they give us time to get to the late game, we'll probably find a way to win. Missing the land with Rejuvenator could definitely hurt given the Spider in hand. Knight of Grace a 3-2 because of our black permanents, so they can't draw cards with Mentor. And they key to Lava Runner, alright. Interesting inclusion. Does let them draw a card with Mentor, I guess. And they are attacking, so perhaps no respect for Journey to Eternity here. And next turn we can already activate it. 6 creatures in graveyard, and nothing too exciting so far. But we can just get back Supplier potentially to find something exciting. So let's just pass the turn. Opponent with an Ajani, adversary. So they can grow some of their creatures, that's fine. The ultimate ability could definitely be somewhat scary. So we will need to pressure it as soon as possible. Opponent gets in. So while we could get back a Supplier with Cave, so we can block with both, fuel the graveyard some more, we could also try and block with the Supplier in the hopes of the top 3 cards giving us something nice so we can get it back end of turn. I think I still prefer just getting another Supplier here. And just prevent the most damage. And then we're pretty likely to find an Izoni here. And a fail case would be a Spider, which can also find Izoni. Alright, so no Izoni, but we're very likely to find one in the top 10 cards. And a Doom Whisperer to boot. Alright, so yeah, we've got 28 cards, there's 3 Izonis in there. So very likely that we find one in the top 10, and I mean, we could still find something else too. And yep, there's Izoni, 2 Izonis even. Probably better than Vraska here. So, not a bad turn. Made a 5/7 Spider, Izoni alongside 10 tokens. Should help us stabilize nicely. Alright. Resplendent Angel, but they don't have any life gain synergies in play.
I will lend you my strength.
And Knight of Grace getting in there. That's an interesting attack. So they might have a pump spell here, but we kind of want Izoni to go to the graveyard. So I'll happily chum block with it. Even though we could have also tried to block with the Spider here. But we just want Izoni in the graveyard for Cave. Alright, and here I don't mind sending all the insects at the Ajani, so it doesn't get to ultimate. And if they don't have any removal spells, this should kill a Ajani. Alright, that's fine. Looks like they might have something here. Alright, Shock, killing an insect token to keep a Ajani on 1 loyalty. Fair enough. Alright, so we could get back Izoni. Still the best target here. Just gonna say go. Could be in a bit of trouble if our opponent finds an answer for the Spider and they start attacking with the Angel. But Boros decks usually don't have a ton of removal that can kill a Spider here. And I'll happily chum block with it. Which is probably pretty safe here, since taking 7 down to 2 can be a little sketchy. I guess we get back Izoni and can gain some life. Because we kind of want a Spider to be able to block the Angel. I think we just block the Angel here. And then end of turn get back Izoni. And can still sacrifice a creature here. I guess what we could have also considered... yeah, that was actually probably better. Since I didn't see that we had 2 spare mana, we could have blocked with a Spider on Angel. Then before damage, get back Izoni. And then with the 2 spare mana and the trigger from Izoni still on the stack, sacrifice her Spider so her opponent doesn't gain 7. And that way they wouldn't have gotten the 4/4 token. And the end result would have also been that we would have gotten 1 additional token, since we would have sacrificed a Spider instead of an insect token. So yeah, we could have gotten a little bit more value here, since we had the 2 spare mana to still activate Izoni. So here we probably just want to deal with the Ajani. And then keep some of our tokens back. So 5, need 2 more. Opponent's got 5 blockers, so this should work. Opponent doesn't even bother blocking there. Alright, so do we play a Doom Whisperer here as a blocker? Do we get back a Spider as a 5/7? I guess Doom Whisperer is better. Is there anything better that we can get back? I suppose what we could have also considered here is just Findbroker returning Vraska, and then Vraska can kill the Resplendent Angel. It's probably pretty safe. So had we played this perfectly, our opponent would not have had the 4/4 token here, which could actually be pretty annoying, given that we don't have any blockers for it. So let's kill the Angel, play Llanowar Elves, and then we just need to deal with the Angel token essentially, since we can deal with the ground creatures pretty easily. So if our opponent has 2 lightning strikes, we could be dead. Well, there's lightning strike number 1. And lightning strike number 2. Alright then. Well, good thing we called it. So yeah, had we made that play with the Spider and sacking it with Izoni, opponent would not have gotten the 4/4 token. We would still be alive, and then we would easily take over the game just by gaining life with Izoni as well. So yeah, slight oversight here that cost us the game, but just goes to show how important small decisions can be, and also kind of showcasing the power of the deck regardless. Alright, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the play, and this hand's looking decent. Some nice early plays. Gonna lead with Llanowar Elves here. Sets up our turn 2 Rejuvenator into turn 3 Vraska. Turn 1 Legion's Landing. So some sort of white base token deck. Could be green-white, could be vampires. Let's just play Rejuvenator here. Find a forest. And yep, it is green-white. And turn 2 Emara. Well, we could just answer Emara with Vraska here, which I don't mind, since it is a pretty scary card sometimes. Yeah, let's go for it. Could have also opted to play Supplier, tapping the Llanowar Elves, but I kind of like having 2 blockers back for the Vampire token in case they can get rid of one of our blockers, so we can still protect Vraska. It's just going to be a Sapling Migration though. And our opponent says go. Alright, so now we can play Supplier. Sack it to Vraska. And what did we mill over? Those are some goodies. So now we could pay 2, play Findbroker, returning whatever card we want here, either 6 mana Vraska or Izoni. I think in this spot I actually like Vraska more. Play another Llanowar Elves. And yeah, we're just in a great spot here. On turn 4 already. Opponent missing land drops. Next turn we could even play a Hatchery Spider, but we're probably just going to go for a Relic Seeker instead. Meanwhile, 4 mana Vraska drawing us extra cards. Sooner or later we'll find another Izoni or a Journey. Opponent could have a Conclave Tribunal to answer one of our Planeswalkers. And yep, that's what we see. But 6 mana Vraska can get rid of enchantments, so that actually works out fine. And we just drew another copy anyway. I still like getting value from the minus ability right away here. And then plus, can even sacrifice the treasure token here. It's actually pretty sweet. Alright. And I think we'll be fine playing defense and just protect our Planeswalkers here. And maybe win with Vraska Ultimate, who knows. And a March of the Multitudes for X equals 2, so not too impressive. Alright, so what now? Probably just playing a Supplier. Sack to Vraska. And Doom Whisper's not bad. So we're Not quite at 6, so we can't hit an Izoni with the spider, so I think we actually just play a Doom Whisperer here instead. And then just make a pirate. And Doom Whisperer can also help us find Izoni. Not that we really need it. Alright, another March of the Multitudes. Let's put a stop on our upkeep here. So let's see. So we do have an Izoni in the graveyard. Not that many creatures, all things considered. I think we're fine activating Doom Whisperer a couple times here. And a Findbroker, what can that find? Can find a Journey. Journey seems sweet. So I think I'm fine with a Findbroker on top here. And I don't think we need the land. Let's just draw. Play Findbroker. Returning Journey. Then we can put Journey on, why not on a Findbroker? Sacrifice using Vraska. Transforming Journey, getting back Findbroker once again. And that can get Izoni, could get a Plaguecrafter, could get a Stitcher Supplier. I guess we're happy with Izoni in the graveyard, so we'll just get a Stitcher Supplier here. And then we can still plus this Vraska. And just empty our hand here. Alright, I think I'm fine attacking with Doom Whisperer. Do want to kill our opponent eventually. I guess we did have Vraska ultimate incoming, but in case I have another Tribunal here to answer Vraska, want to get normal damage started. And we've got some pretty good blockers for the 1/1 tokens here, so not too worried about losing a blocker. And yeah, next turn we can just ultimate 4 mana Vraska and attack with a flyer. Alright, so I don't think there's a need to surveil with Doom Whisperer here. Let's just draw. Ultimate Vraska. And attack with Doom Whisperer. And that does it, sweet. Alright, I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this gameplay, and as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for being part of the channel, and you can become a patron yourself today and decide the topic of future videos over at patreon.com/LegenVD.